Hello, welcome to Toffee TV. I am delighted to be joined in the studio today by Giulia Bould, who has been the producer and reporter of this fine series on BBC Sounds, Everton, Nothing Will Be the Same. Mate, if you haven't listened to it, loads of you have. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. It's tremendous. 10 episodes. It's absolutely brilliant. Julia's come along for a chat about it today. Welcome.
Thank you. My secret life is out there now.
I was going to say, yeah. Are you sleeping better now that this is done and dusted and out there?
A little bit, yeah. It's been really, really overwhelming the last few days. I hoped it would go down okay. I hope people would like it. It seems to have just gone massive though. So yeah, I'm not massively sleeping still, but I think it'll all calm down. But yeah, a lot of people have gone, I had no idea you were in there. The amount of people while I was in there kept saying, imagine if there was a series on Everton this season. And I'd say, yeah, imagine. Knowing full well I was in there. Yeah, it's been amazing. The reaction has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, listen, it's absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant. It's enlightening. Did it feel like you were going in the jungle or something, or Big Brother house and you couldn't say a word to people? And was it sneak? Were you turning up at Finch Farm with your camouflage on so no one could recognise you?
Army rolling in the door and all that, yeah. Do you know, the food was nicer. It didn't have any dodgy, critters.
No,
the food was
good.
Delicious, I have to say.
That is good.
Yeah, the chef's brilliant. Yeah, it was an odd experience because a few people knew, but I disappeared off Radio Merseyside and all sorts, and I think a lot of people thought I'd left. So there was sort of that going on. And yeah, it is hard. The hardest thing is I still went to press conferences for BBC Radio Merseyside. Yeah. So sometimes I'd be thinking, right, I know that. Is that out there yet? No, it's not. Cause I'd have to keep my mouth shut about things or being on air still and think, well, I can't say that because I'm sat on that. No one knows about it. So that was so I'm glad everything's out there now and I don't have to lie and I don't have to think about, can I say that or can I not say that? Yeah, it was highly pressurized in there, of course, because of the situation, and that wasn't what anyone expected when either side signed up to this. I was put in November, and I assumed I was going in there, because you never know, but to sort of look at how Frank Lampard's rebuilding the side after the previous season, how he was working with the players, and then very quickly, after the World Cup break, as you know, you don't need to tell you what happened. It changed, and then you have no idea where this storyline is taking you whatsoever.
Well, we'll come on to that, because obviously we're going to say, but how did this come about then? Because obviously, like you just said, you went in November, so how did this all come about?
Yeah, the BBC and Everton were in a conversation and an access agreement was drawn up between the two. And I was the person that was dropped into Finch Farm.
Helicopter or?
Yeah, helicoptered in. It was when they jump off, in Iceland. Yeah, parachuted in, landed on the first team pitch. No. So I was put in there and, had a little desk in there, was allowed to have my food in there, was very much part of it. And then, I had to work alongside the club, work alongside all the different, the first team, the women's team, the academy, and just get stuck in.
Were you nervous going in?
Terrified.
Were you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did that ever ease up?
No.
Fair enough.
It was terrifying anyway, because the more serious the situation got, you're thinking, I'm in here now, and, fair play to the club. They didn't kick me out at any point. And I think some clubs might have said, you know what, this is not what we signed up to whatsoever. We're shutting the doors. And then also I felt a bit of a responsibility that I had one chance to get all this stuff. Yeah. It was all had to be collated, and I felt like it was the only time anyone would get to know what it was really like in there. So, I'm still a bit terrified. It's slowly, but I've been terrified for nearly a year, just in a constant state of terror.
So when did you know then? So you went in November. How long before that did you know that this was coming up?
Not long. It all happened pretty fast.
Did it?
I think a matter of about 3 weeks or so. Okay, so it really turned around fast. So it just disappeared in there. Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it? Because you went in. I know the double Bournemouth game is mentioned quite a bit, isn't it? Which was a horrible time. But it is so strange because we interviewed Frank Lampard. I interviewed Frank Lampard at Finch Farm in that. It was in between the two Bournemouth games, so he wasn't very happy with the first game. and it was ahead of the league game at the weekend. But there was still a feeling, and I don't know whether you thought that, although you did say this, I think, on the show, that at that time, yeah, we did a little bit of a sticky path. We just lost at home to Leicester, and then we're heavily beaten at Bournemouth, and it was an awful performance at Bournemouth. But he was still very, very upbeat about what he wanted to do, and he was aware of a game at the weekend. Then there's the break for the World Cup, and then the focus was turning almost to the January transfer window. And I got the impression they kind of knew what they needed and what they were going for in the January. And that 6-week break, they were going to almost reset and start again. It felt like it was, like you just said, almost the rebuilding process is ongoing. And even though the defeat tempered it a bit, it still felt like, yeah, he's got a handle on what's going on, even though some people were questioning him and others were talking about maybe they would have changed him in that break. Did you feel when you went in there that everything was pointing towards that, almost like the next bit of the rebuild in January? That's how they were looking.
Definitely. I think everyone was you could see he was really liked inside Finch from everybody, from, you know, the kitchen staff, the kit men, you know, people on reception, player, everybody liked him. And I have to say, I can only speak of my own experience with him as well. He was really good with me in there on all my recording kit, and I was allowed to go to training, and he let me in the behind closed doors game against Aston Villa, which was obviously still just after, I think the World Cup had finished. It was not far off the season restarting.
And we won.
Yeah.
We won 2-0.
2-0, yeah. I know, there was me and about 3 others sat there. It was the weirdest experience. It was a freezing cold afternoon as well.
Yeah.
And I got a text saying, Frank says, do you want to come to the game? I was like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll come to the game.
Yeah, we'll have that.
But yeah, at that point, everyone with him, definitely it felt like the rebuild. It felt like get to January. I think the double Bournemouth week, as it is now known, felt a little bit like a blip. And I know with hindsight, people can look back at the bigger picture and say, maybe that's where a managerial change should have happened. I don't think anyone expected sort of what happened.
No.
And the speed with which it all happened as well. I think that was what came as a shock. And that week after he'd gone, it was difficult in there. It was hard.
I was going to say, because it did unravel really quickly, didn't it? I remember we had Wolves at home. We were bottom of the league when we come back, and people were going, well, get that one and we'll be okay. And then City away, and the fixtures, we had Wolves, Southampton and West Ham all in
Brighton.
4 weeks. Brighton and City were the 2 tricky ones, but the other 3 were like, well, they're all around us, so get points there, we'll be fine, and if we get the players in we need. But you're right, it did unravel quickly. So when you're in there, and I know on the series you're saying there's the week of the Southampton game, and he was sat on a ball in the rain, and you seen him because you were at the training session. Could you see the fact that it was getting to him? It was because it was starting to come out in press conferences. He was always brilliant. He always knew exactly what to say.
He's a charismatic
comes across
man and passionate, and there is no doubt I think he's spoken about it since recently, hasn't he? I know he was on Sky, I think, the other week. He loved being part of Everton. So it wasn't that he didn't buy into it. It wasn't that he didn't love his job. But yeah, it began to spin that quickly. And yeah, there was a moment in a training session where he was sat on a ball watching what was going on, and it doesn't matter who you are at that point. And I know everyone goes, well, they paid all this money, and it doesn't matter. You're a human being. And it's hard when everyone can see, you know, he's going to press conferences and you get asked the most awful, awkward questions about your own job. And, you know, the TV cameras are zooming in you on 90 minutes as soon as, you know, a game's being lost. That kind of, I don't know, humiliation, for want of a better word, will get to anyone. I don't think that's anything about how much you've got in your bank account at that stage. That's completely different. And yeah, he looked shattered. He looked absolutely exhausted. And it wasn't for the want of trying. I was there quite long days. He used to be there well before me. I think he arrived at 7 in the morning. I used to leave sometimes about 6-ish. He'd still be there. He was putting the hours in, him and his staff. But just sometimes you know what it's like with football. It spins that fast out of control that you can't do anything. And it wasn't nice. It's not nice to see anywhere. Maybe I am a bit that way. I don't like to see things like that happen. But seeing it happen literally in front of your eyes, yeah, that's difficult to see that, because nobody wants to see that at the end of the day.
No, I think we all wanted him to do well, and I certainly did. I thought he did buy into Everton, and he wanted to succeed. And you know, we come in looking like a male model, but at the end he was looking really stressed. And Everton does that. Everton's done that to quite a few managers. He's not the first. I'm sure he won't be the last. At least this manager has a skinhead now, so it might be a while before he notices.
I think he said that himself.
Yeah, I think he's all right with that. But just before we go back onto that, like, how much access did you get then? What was it? Was it like literally you can go anywhere? Was it a little bit like we'll let you in? You know, I mean, in general, you don't have to give me the ins and outs, but was it literally like you recall, what were you doing all day? Were you just...
No, but I wasn't just eating.
No.
The canteen was lovely. I wasn't just eating.
Because it's a fascinating listen. I'm just wondering from actually how you put the content together, obviously what we do. So
yeah, I mean,
how much
as
stuff
ever,
are you getting?
I mean, there's tons and tons of stuff you just record all the time, because we had no idea how this was going to finish.
Of course.
No clue it was going to what? 33 minutes plus 10 minutes at the end of the game.
Yeah.
You know, 43 minutes off the worst case scenario. I don't think anyone... I think if you were going to write a film script for it, that's probably how you would have wanted it, but not really, not again, thanks. No. It was a bit too much for me, that one, on my nerves. I mean, I was under Frank, I was allowed to go to training. So that, you know, when Paul Tate and Leighton Baines took training, I was allowed to go to training then. I was allowed in the first team block, which is unusual. So you're not normally allowed in the first team block. And the offices are upstairs. So downstairs there is, I think I can say this, there's the changing room, and there's a boot room and all that, and it leads out to the pitches. And upstairs there's quite a lot of offices and meeting spaces, and then a long corridor. And at the bottom, Sean Dyche's, the manager's office is on the right-hand side, and Kevin Thelwell's on the left. And in his, I think I say it in the series, his is piled high of paperwork and files and folders and all sorts of stuff, and his door's always propped open. To be fair, it's not a shut door. And then in contrast, Sean Dyche's office, there's just a desk and a couple of chairs,
and that's it.
Empty shelves. No, and I do ask him about that in the series, and he's very funny about that. But yeah, Is
he not planning on stopping? Is that what that many managers have been through it?
He just doesn't like things of his own. He explains that in the series. He says at home he doesn't have a lot of things of his own stuff. He has all things for his family, but
not his own.
But I did feel a bit like it was the headmaster's office. You know, when you get...
He does come across a bit like...
Yeah, I went in there a couple of times, and the first time I did say to him, am I going to get told off?
Yeah.
I didn't get told off.
He strikes me as someone who could tell you off. Yeah. So, obviously, you go in there, and the plan is to chart Frank Lampard rebuild. Hopefully, it was going to end happily, and it didn't. I mean, what was that like being in there when that inevitable moment comes where Frank Lampard is sacked, and then there's a period... You just referenced, haven't you, Leighton Baines and Paul Tate taking training. Was it like a, say the Mary Celeste, but people were in there, but was it like a real somber feeling of the manager going and you're just waiting for another appointment? It
happens quickly as well. Yeah. I didn't see Frank. I've never seen Frank again. I've never seen him again. Right, so it happens very speedily. Everything changes, and then there's big TVs up around Fitch Farm, because they're like the rest of us. The TVs are on, you know, watching what's going on. And there's surreal points where you're watching players watching the TV, looking who their new manager might be. And that's a surreal...
You've got people phoning up, auditioning for the manager's job at that stage in the middle, Vita Pereira.
Exactly. So, they didn't... You know, all they can do is come to work, train. There was no game because the FA Cup campaign was already over. So it felt a really odd week that week. No game to prepare for, no manager. So no media was in there, but I was in there and, you know, speaking to people and making sure I kind of got those. Because I think if you asked people now, what was it like in that week? You get a different perspective. But if you ask them at that point, they give you a really honest assessment of how they're feeling right now. And in the series, you hear from Seamus, and you hear how he's feeling it. And he says he's taken his child out, and somebody came up to him in the park really nicely. Like he said, there was no issue, but he sees how much it means to people. And you know, and he's sort of thinking, already had this the previous season, it's happening again. How do we stop it? How do we work on it? Paul Tate's in there, Leighton Baines, who I don't think ever imagined he'd be taking first team training, but he was, and he did a good job. He took part for a bit as well. He had a bib on and took part, so it looked like he could do a job. So but it was a very surreal week, that you're behind the other side of Finch Farm where no one else is, and then you're looking at the TV and the TV cameras are outside Finch Farm, and I felt very much part of, you know, the team then, and then we're just all watching the telly, seeing what's being said about the club, and you're in it, and it's a very surreal situation that I don't think I've ever been in before.
From a reporter and producer's point of view for this, can you now look at that and say it's not a good thing, because obviously we want Frank Lampard to succeed, and we've said he's a nice man and everything else, but for the series, did that kind of give it I don't want to say make it better, but did it give it a different flavour, a different angle? Because obviously Sean Dyche comes in.
I never envisaged a situation where the manager would change. I thought I'd go all the way through it with the same manager. I don't know. I'm still a bit kind of overwhelmed by everything at the minute.
Yeah.
I think, if you take all the emotion out of it, which is hard for me because I got really emotionally invested by the end of it.
Would, yeah.
And it possibly, if you've got to script something, this is how you'd script it. But not when you're in there, no.
No, not at all. Not at all. So obviously Sean Dyche come in. How have you found him compared to Frank Lampard in terms of they both appear on the outside to be different characters? You know, Frank's quite smooth and all of that. Sean's got a very headmastery style to him, it appears. So, have you found both of them in terms of working with you?
Yeah, Lampard was he was good.
He's Lampard now, is he?
Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard. It was good.
Yeah.
Sean Dyche, I think he said himself, hasn't he? He's a Marmite manager, and I'm afraid I absolutely love him.
Okay. You don't need to be afraid.
I fall on that side, and that's only because I spent much more time with him than I did Frank Lampard. In fairness, a lot more time with the gaffer, as he tells me off for calling him Sean in the thing. And he's got the driest sense of humour. I have quite a dry sense of humour anyway, so I find it quite funny.
Yeah.
I understand people probably don't always get his jokes, but I like it. I like how he brought a completely sense. He kind of came straight in and took the emotion out of it straight away.
Right.
And I thought that was very clever to do that. Sports psychology wise, he's a fascinating person to just sit and watch about the training ground, how he operates, how he speaks to people. And I think people will be surprised. He could have a real good laugh with the players. A really good laugh. You hear a bit with Tom Davis and him in the series where he's laughing about living in a mirrorless house.
Yeah.
But, and he brought in his wheel of misfortune as well, which I think was a really clever way of doing it instead of fining players for leaving the shin pads out or leaving the coffee cup on the table and not putting it away. Because you do have to do your own plates, at Finch Farm.
Good.
Yeah, you have to go and scrape them all and put them onto the thing.
Excellent.
So, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Did that change, or has that always been?
No, that's always been there.
Okay.
But a very odd moment where I was waiting to kind of put my cutlery in the thing, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin's there doing it, putting his cutlery in the soapy water.
Good. But that means he does it at home as well in the dishwasher.
Keeps it real.
Plating.
But he's fascinating, is Sean Dyche, as a person, as a manager, and I enjoyed his company. A little bit scary.
Just a bit. I mean, it's really good. What this series has done is, I think, I personally don't think the football club do it enough, is humanise these people. So it's very easy to, because we've often said on this channel, it's felt like 2.5 seasons have been one season. So just
Seamus says that
misery. That's what it feels like. Just misery.
He just said he feels like it's not been. He doesn't even feel like it was from a World Cup break. He says it just feels like it's been 2 years.
No, that's it. Just one go.
And
and so you're like a coiled spring. Evertonians, it's getting worse and worse because there's no let up, and therefore it's very easy then to dismiss people, I think, as a supporter.
Yeah.
To just go, not good enough, or why should I back him? I don't. And I think that this is something that I hope changes at the football club. I think it will with new ownership. They'll try to humanise them a little bit more, because I think that's what this series has done brilliantly. Kevin Thelwell, a person who I know Evertonians want to hear more from, and for whatever reason it hasn't happened enough with the football club. But I think on this, I think he comes across really well, and I think that to me has been one of the biggest takeaways from this. How you've got him. I know you interviewed him, and so did Mark Chapman as well. And I think he comes out of this really good, but he's still a little bit of a mystery man to Evertonians, and we feel like we need to know more from him. I think it comes out what his plans are. How did you find dealing with him?
Yeah, he explains things so well. He's really good at explaining things, and he takes his time. And I think that was good with the series as well, because we could take a little bit more time. And Mark Chapman's episode with him is, I mean, it's one of my favourite episodes. It's just them two sat talking, and it's brilliant. He's got humour. He talks about his dad being an Evertonian as well, and you know, he says his harshest critic is his dad, and he's got to keep his dad happy. And yeah, and I have to say, I sat with him, you know, and I saw him around a few times, and when he was explaining to me about January and what happened, and you know, he spoke about Dan Juma in quite big detail, and he spoke about why he decided, you know, at the end, you know, we're not going to buy anyone, we're not going to spend any more money. And actually, he got a lot of criticism at times, and so did the club, as you know.
Yeah.
And when you look at it as a business decision, everybody else, you know, Leeds and Leicester spent money, and everyone knows what happened there. So he got it right, and I think it's very easy to criticise people, but you've also got to go, actually, when things go right, there's got to be some praise, and it's lovely to hear him go into his thought process around all that. And yeah, he's great with Mark, definitely, and you know, talking about what's to come and what, you know, and he doesn't make any false promises either. It takes time. So he's not saying he's going to have it fixed by Christmas. You know, it's going to take time. And I think as long as someone's honest, and he's a really honest guy and really interesting and will go into depth, and he puts some long hours in, I'm telling you, I think he lives there. I don't think I ever saw him go home, so I don't know if he does live there.
Maybe he just does live there.
Just lives it, has a bed underneath his desk or something. Yeah, you know, I know when he went, you know, he had a few days with his family just at the end of the season, but he had his phone with him and it was going all the time. So yeah, he's a really hard-working guy, and I'm glad he's come across really well, I have to say, because I found him very honest and interesting to talk to. I could speak to him for days. Not that he'd have the time, nobody want to.
No, but I do think that's certainly a huge plus point from it, I think, and he's come out of it really well. And like you say, I hope from our perspective as Evertonians that the club realised how well it's come across, and that we want more of that, because that is a direction that, as fans, we don't need to be told the ins and outs, but we need something to believe in, and we've had it the other way so far. So I think this has been fantastic at doing that. What was it like coming towards the end of the season then? Because obviously you've gone in there, as you said, hoping to see a rebirth of Everton, you know, in some form, hoping for a calmer season under the manager. We've had all of this stuff going on. The manager's being changed, comes in, and there's some positive stuff at the start, and then Everton, it's a little bit of a sticky spell of home games. What was it feeling as you were coming towards the end of the season? What was the mood?
There was 32
like
injuries, wasn't there?
Exactly. Everyone's getting injured.
I mean, I think I nearly got injured at one point. That last few weeks. But do you know what? It was the weirdest experience, because I, like everybody else, I'd have it on the TV, I'd have it on the radio, I'd be constantly immersed in it, which I don't know why, because it wasn't very good for my mental health. No. But I think it's all any of us did, was just constantly talk about it, listen to it, watch it. But you'd go in, and I'd open the door and go into Finch Farm, and it was genuinely calm. Genuinely. It was...
Is that something Sean Dyche brought in, do you think? Yeah, is that
Yeah, he says in the series to me, when we're sat in the canteen, the first time I properly recorded with him, and he says, I'm always here. I'm never here when we've won or here when we've lost. I'm always here. And if you do look at him, he's always pretty much the same. Pretty much the same. Yeah. And he worked hard to take the emotion out of it, because the last thing you need is nerves going into that. And it was calm in there. I mean, you could tell players were thinking about it a lot. And you could see some players were definitely constantly thinking about it. I mean, Seamus talks about it very honestly, but that's who he is. Connor Cody was there, and you could tell he was thinking about it, and he was doing a lot of talking. A lot of the senior players, sort of the bigger voices, James Tarkowski as well, talking to people and just kind of trying to get people's sort of morale up and the experience that they were bringing to it. And you know, Dwight McNeil had been in it, same as Tarky had been in it the season before with Burnley, and had a different outcome. So they were drawing upon that as well. But it was calm. I think they're the first team with probably the calmest people in there. There was a couple of times you'd glance at people and go, and everyone would go, okay, okay, it's all right, it's all right. And there was a lot of sort of, it'll be okay, things to, with the kit men and all that kind of stuff. And the ground staff and everybody, you hear it in the series, those last few weeks did everything to their maximum, whether it was preparing the training pitches. Everyone was making sure everything was perfect. The food was perfect. The kits were all perfect. I went in that kit room and everything was done well in advance. And it was the same on the last game of the season. I don't know about you, but I got there like 5 hours early. I think because it was just, and I can't sit at home any longer with it being a 4:30 kickoff. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, horrible.
But yeah, it was calm with the first team. Yeah, I wasn't calm.
No,
I pretended I was calm in there.
That game, obviously building to that game, there've been moments where, and it's on the series, isn't it, where you catch your fans coming out and they're like, we're gone, we're down. Newcastle, Fulham at home was just dreadful. And then we had obviously the big boost at Brighton, which come from nowhere. Leicester, we should have won, then we could have lost, but Jordan, save. And then it comes to that Bournemouth game. We'd gone to Wales for the week, but we're only 2 days in, so me and my boy drove back on that Bournemouth day. So I timed it to get into the ground as late as possible because I was just literally...
As Z Cars is playing, you were right.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying not to give any thought to it because... The more, like you said, the more you think about it, the worse it gets. But on that day, when Decore scored and the noise was just, I was Bayern Munich, which was incredible. It was the best game I've ever been to in my life, the noisiest. But there's a few games where that noise level is like, oh my God, I can't hear myself think. And when Decore scored that goal, apart from me kissing randoms around me and hugging everyone when it went in, I mean, it was unbelievable. So what was it like for you when that final whistle went and you thought, they've done it? If you didn't faint by then, obviously, because...
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind as well, I couldn't tell anyone where I sit. I was stressed anyway, and then I couldn't tell anyone about what also... I was also in the back of my head thinking, oh my goodness, like, how is this series going to end? What's going to happen? What happens if the worst case scenario happens? And yeah, it couldn't have been impacting every area of my life more, really, at that point.
Okay.
I mean, I got to go down to the tunnel at the end, and you hear it again in the series, speak to the manager and Toffee at the end. And I think it's probably, I was just all over the place. I couldn't even string a sentence together to even speak to them. I was covered in, it's the least professional I think I've ever looked. I was covered in dirt. I don't know how I'd got dirty, and I think I'd probably, as everyone had celebrated that goal, I think I'd probably gone over the back of a chair, I don't know. And I ended up sat waiting. There was a little, I don't want to call it a cupboard. It's probably not big enough to call it a room, but a little bit bigger than a cupboard. And I was waiting just off the tunnel for them to come and see me. A cloak room. And I just felt exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And there was a mop bucket, and I tipped it upside down. And I just sat on a mop bucket, and all the recording equipment was all over the floor, and I just sat on a mop bucket and had a moment. And then the manager walked in, and I was scrambling up, trying to get up, thinking, I'm not being, But and I just in the back of my head was thinking, thank goodness for that. This series is going to end with that.
The positive, the glamorous life of a journalist, sat on a mop bucket waiting for the manager. Absolutely. What are... Looking back now, what were like your favourite bits or the most enlightening bit of that? Because obviously it's what was it, 7 months of your life, 8 months of your life, something like that, and a hell of a lot more because it's still going on now. But I just mean actual being in there and living it. It's a huge part of it's a long year, isn't it?
It was a huge amount of my time being in there, and sometimes you'd get a phone call saying, come now and you can do that. And I was there when Dyche arrived on the Saturday. I got a phone call saying he's going to arrive in an hour. Can you get here?
So off you go.
Yeah, literally just. I was in scruffs at home. Just chuck something smarter on and went. The highlights for me, I think, have been. I mean, one of the best afternoons I had was with Dyche and Ian Wone. Sat talking. You hear that in episode 4, and just talking to them and them telling me about how they met and their friendship and how they work is fascinating. And see, that was a really good afternoon. I always enjoy recording with Seamus anyway because he's completely honest and there's no side to him.
The legend.
Don't call. He's going to kill. He's going to kill me.
I'll call him. You don't need to call him.
I called him once, and I've now caused an absolute stir, and I'm dreading seeing him now because he'll go. And I've got this awful thing of everyone now going to go up to and go, you are a legend.
Yeah, well, that's it.
He's going to get peppered, as
him saying no, we should have just said, well, that's your words, not mine, or something, and left it at that.
So that was good. It's hard. Now I've finished it and it's out. There's so many. I loved being in the kit room. I loved being in there with Jimmy and Tony. It was great. And they'd always help me if it was freezing cold at training. And they'd go, here, have some extra kit.
Get this on.
So that was great. Recording with the women's side, brilliant. Meg Finnegan's absolutely fantastic in it. Obviously now the captain.
Woman of the moment.
Woman
Derby,
of the moment
Derby
as
winner.
well. Yeah, and she's brilliant in it. Her and Lucy Hope near the end. Sort of how that last few days with the men's team is impacting them, because it impacts everybody.
Of course.
You know, and they're great on that. It's so hard to pick.
Yeah.
I think if I had to pick one, it would be the afternoon with the manager and Ian Wone. But there's so many points. There's so
I'm not going to keep pushing you on it.
many.
It's a fantastic series. Comes across brilliantly. You've done a magnificent job on it. Deserve all the credit because it's brilliant. Is there anything now it's done that you'd change, or is there anything you wish I'd have done that for it, or are you just looking and going, nah, that was really good? Well, I'm glad that we're where we are now, because it's out and everyone seems to be loving it.
Do you know what? I'm not kind of somebody who tries to, in anything I do, is go, oh, I'd do that differently if I could.
Yeah.
I had one shot to get each bit I got, and I did my best. If other people think they could have done better, I'm completely fine with that. It was an emotional roller coaster. Someone said to me, you can't call it a roller coaster though, because you've got to have ups and downs. They said, I think that's unfair, because actually there were ups as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think there's anything I would change. I think just looking back at it now, I'm just sort of just amazed I stayed in there.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's fair play to everybody in Finch Farm, and also the fact that they were so honest and open when they did record. And I don't know if that's a difference between audio and cameras as well. I know a few people have said, oh, it'd have been nice to have a camera. I think people have fallen in love with audio again off this. Which I'm a bit of an audio geek. I'm a bit of a radio geek and all that. So I like the fact it is a podcast series, and I think that the BBC Studio sounds engineers have done an incredible job mixing it. And I think you could actually, the description or the music or whatever's going on, I hope people feel like they're actually there. And that's so I don't think there's anything I would change. I've not really got any regrets. I'm just overwhelmed, I'll be honest. I can't think straight at the minute. I'm completely overwhelmed.
You need to just accept that everyone's loving it, because you've done such a good job on it. And that's the way it is. It's difficult because it's coming up to a year of your life, isn't it? From start to, it probably must have been around now, maybe, that you found out last year or something.
Yeah.
So that's a huge project to be part of, and especially when you've got to keep it quiet, but for a handful of people. And then I guess it's coming out, and then you're thinking, oh, how's this going to be received? You need to relax.
Yeah.
Everything I've seen is positive. People are loving it. There'll always be, you could do something perfect and people will go, oh, I wish. I'd have loved it to be cameras, I'll be honest. I love all the. And one thing I think it might do is it might be a gateway to that in the future.
It might be, who knows?
Because you've done such a good job. And people at the BBC, Mark Chapman, they might go, oh, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
We can be portrayed, because I do think Everton needs to move forward. But for you, just breathe now. It's out there.
I haven't slept for about a year. I haven't slept at all. And then the night, obviously I knew, we didn't even do anything before. We just dropped online. And I didn't sleep, and I watched each episode uploading on Sounds at 6 a.m. last Thursday morning. And I just thought, I am absolutely terrified. But people have been, I'm just completely overwhelmed. I really am genuine, and I haven't slept because my head is spinning, and it's gone. People have loved it more than I hoped. I think Mark Chapman is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, Mark Chapman's done a fantastic job.
He's somebody that I think he's a legend to me in broadcasting, and he's narrating a series that I've been on. It's completely insane. Yeah, and we do message now. I'm like, oh, this is so exciting.
No, he's good, and obviously he has got a little bit of an affinity with that, and he's come and done some of the Everton awards as well. He's presented them, so I know he's not an Evertonian as such.
And he says his brother-in-law's an Evertonian, and he says that in the series as well. and I think it's his nephew as well. And he's got a lot of admiration for the club, a lot of, and I think that comes across.
Yeah, it does.
A lot of respect for, you know, the history of the club, and fair play to him. But yeah, it's the whole thing has been, and I'm so sorry if people are messaging me and I haven't got back to them. I'm just completely at a loss as to what to say apart from thank you.
You've had a listen. You've lived something for a year, and I think it's to have to keep it under wraps. It must be incredibly difficult to have to do for that long when you're in it. All the stuff that's gone on. Everton isn't an easy ride for anyone. So having that on top of it, and then you do have those nerves before it goes out. So listen, everyone loves it. Everything I've seen, people I've spoke to, we all love it in this room. People we speak to, everyone's, and you can see it everywhere. It's whether it's quotes, whether
it's mad.
People saying, watch this, do this, talk people, conversation about it. It's brilliant, and that's normally a sign that you've done something right. So you should be very proud.
And non-football fans are listening, which is another thing. I've had a few people going, I don't like football, and I'm listening to this and I'm liking it. That's probably the drama, though, isn't it?
Signs of something that's been put together very well.
Completely stressed.
Well, you need to just relax now.
Well, thank you. Relax. Yeah, I mean, I should say thank you to BBC Studios, BBC Sounds, everyone at 5 Live that's all worked on this, because of the big team that have, you know, waded through hours and hours and hours of stuff to make sure that we got all the best stuff in for everyone to listen to. Yeah, big thanks to Mark Chapman, who's been ace on the whole thing. And massive thanks to Everton, because without them, we wouldn't have anything.
Well, just be you talking.
Just be me, and nobody needs that.
Well, you know.
My meltdown at the end of episode 6 after Newcastle is enough.
Listen, we know now that if I'm a celebrity, you're looking for someone to go on it, you can keep a secret, so we know that. You can go on there, or Dancing on Ice, or Big Brother. So you're there now, that's your next thing.
Do you reckon?
Well, you've put yourself in the shop window.
I'm a nobody. Nobody wants me on that.
Well, we'll see. Listen, there's a few people on there who, Anyway, listen, thank you very much for coming in and having a chat about it.
Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. Congratulations on it. Sure, it'll continue to get bigger. If you haven't checked it out, it's there. Why haven't you, Evertonian? I'm sure you have. But if you haven't, it's on BBC Sounds. It's free. Give it a listen. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So go and check it out. Thank you very much again, Giulia. Well done. We'll see you later.